if you have a system to record your demos, then you can use that to record the songs properly at some point and also practice the songs for a live show or whatever.
So many reasons why recording makes so much sense these days, and it's so cool that we have the ability to do that.
If you just have a decent bounce of the song, that's plenty. I'm moving on and kind of leaving the podcast, which is insane because we're 257 episodes in.
Man, I don't even know what to say.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am your host, Benedict Hein. I am a mixing engineer. I run a mixing studio called Outback Recordings, where we mix a lot of songs every year, hundreds of them. And over the years, because we've been doing this for a while now, we've learned a lot. We've been working with DIY bands and people who record themselves a lot. So it's not always big projects. It's a lot of self-recorded stuff. And so we always help the artists get better recordings at the source, help them improve how they capture things, and so that we can do a better job mixing and ultimately get them better results. And all those learnings from all these years of working on those projects, we're now sharing with you on this platform, the Self-Recording Band, and on this podcast specifically. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for listening. If you're already a listener and you know all that, welcome back. Always appreciate you. The topic for today is about replacing band members. And this might not sound directly recording related, but it is, I promise. So we talk about how being able to record yourself properly helps you whenever someone gets sick, when you need to replace someone for a live show, when you need to find a new band member because someone leaves the band, stuff like that. So we're going to talk about this and why it is worth, for that alone, to be able to record properly and do at least really good demos. As always, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm doing this with two co-hosts today, which is fantastic. So I'm here with my good friend and longtime co-host of this podcast, Malcolm Owen-Flood from Canada. Hello, Malcolm. So glad to have you.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back. Good to be back.
Yeah, and we're also here with Manel Espinosa Berenguer from Spain, the current podcast of the co-host of this podcast. So both of them are here, and I'm very excited about this. So if you've been listening to the last couple of episodes, you already know Manel, and so we're back together. It's the first time since October, I think, October probably, and yeah, that's awesome. So hello, Manel, good to have you too.
Hi, also glad to be here again.
So both of them, I want to introduce myself. Both of them are fantastic music producers. So if you're not familiar with the show, as I said, I'm a mixing engineer. Malcolm has been a mixing engineer for a long time, specializing in mastering for a short while, then doing full production he's done it all and very well with different types of artists. Manel is a producer and mixer at the moment who's working with people from all over Europe and is doing a lot of production work, writing, arranging, helping bands turn their demos into full productions. So between the three of us, we are covering all parts of the music production process. So they definitely know what they're talking about. And I am actually the one who's doing the least amount of, I would say, music or production work. I'm primarily mixing, and so everyone has different angles here. Anyway, glad to be doing this. So this topic, replacing band members, what does this have to do with the podcast on how to record yourself properly? Malcolm, I think it was your idea, so maybe you go first.
Well, I mean, it came up from experience. My old Band of Rascals, we had to have substitute players in a few times, and we did have a band member change once, I think. And that could have been a lot easier if we had done a little bit of work and had a little bit of foresight, because we had all the tools we needed. We just didn't think to use them or prepare them for something like this happening. And let me, sorry, I'm just seeing that I'm peaking a little bit. Maybe I talk louder than I used to. Actually, no, I'm like 10 dBs louder than I normally am. Whoops. All right. I haven't podcasted in a while, guys. You've probably noticed. We'll talk about that too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the big struggle of if you need to all of a sudden, on short notice probably, have somebody play the songs that your band plays, a bunch of original songs probably. The big problem is teaching them. How do they learn the songs? They might not be recorded or released to the wild yet. So they might not be able to look them up and learn them off Spotify. And even if they can, that's not a very efficient way of getting it done either. So the obvious answer is, if you have recorded your tracks, have instrumental stems printed of your tracks so that you can then send that to whoever needs to learn it. I did get to do this. Actually, Benny, when you were out in Canada for my wedding, we went to a music festival and I played with an artist named Darian Gerard, great pop punk artist. That was the perfect example of this being done right, because she did have all that stuff. So I did, because I mixed all their songs. But I stemmed it all out and then sent it to the whole band. And now everybody had their instrument in isolation as well as everybody else's instrument to learn the songs and practice the songs. And it is the only way we were able to learn the songs that quick, because we waited way too late to get this band together.
Yeah, totally. I thought about that situation actually with Darren Gerard. Or when I was there, I found it very impressive how you put that whole live band together. And, it's not something that, at least at the time, I think all those people were not, they were doing different things. It's not that they were playing in this band all the time. They just had to learn those songs, and maybe it was even different people for different gigs. I don't know. But you had to have a way to make it easy for people to learn the songs and be able to play them live. If there's not that one band that always stays the same and practices every week, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Ideally, this is a scenario you never have to deal with, but when it does come up, it's usually super short notice. Like, the two reasons I can think of is like extreme sickness. Somebody just cannot be on a stage for for a whole gig, so you got to get somebody in. That's going to be very short notice. You're going to be talking about like 24 hours notice to pull that off.
Yeah.
So are you going to cancel the gig or try and make this happen? Right? Really hard to do. The other is changing band members permanently, and that also tends to be short notice, because that's usually an emotional kind of thing that happens where there's a bit of an argument. It doesn't usually end well when somebody's all of a sudden not in the band. And that means you got to get somebody trained up really quick to fill that gig you probably have coming up, right? That's not always the case. It could be a mutual thing and you don't have gigs booked for months and you got all the time in the world. But you just got to be prepared to be able to solve this either way, right? The Darian Gerard example we just talked about, that was kind of a best case scenario. We had tracks to learn from. Every song existed in a recorded form to learn and practice with. We had the tempos and everything, right? No problem. Going back to my band, Band of Rascals, whenever we had to do this, it was not that at all. We just would find somebody and tell them to somehow learn the songs and get them out to a jam if we could. And they would just have to kind of figure it out. But still worked, but kind of because we were lucky, we just managed to find extremely great session musicians for those scenarios. So just like, 1 in a million kind of bass players or something. It was usually a bass player we needed to sub in. I think it happened maybe twice. It's not a lot, but they killed it. We had this guy Joe Avio come out on a tour with like no notice. He played his. I don't think he made a rehearsal. He just got on stage with us and had it down magically, which was fantastic. Maybe we played it a couple times in the RV on the way there, kind of thing. But that's like, you can't plan for that, right? You can just do a little bit of work and have all this stuff ready. Just if you have already recorded the song, get the tracks ready.
Yes, 100%. Yep, we want to talk a little bit about simple approaches to multi-track recording, because if the primary goal for you is just to be able to record, let's say you hire producers and mixers for the actual releases, but maybe you don't have the multi-tracks for whatever reason, or if you're just starting out, you don't have any release out there yet, and I still think one of the first things you should do is like put a simple setup together so you can record multi-tracks and get at least everything documented in a way that you can do these things that we're talking about here now. So we want to talk a little about a simple approach to multi-track recording, what actually matters and what doesn't for that purpose, and then also how to store, archive, and share the material between the band members. And Yeah, I've run into the situation quite a bit, and honestly, I didn't think about this topic, but I thought it was a very good idea when Malcolm brought it up, because when I look back at the time when I was in the touring band, we sometimes, or like in all the bands that I've been in, actually, there are sometimes moments also where a really great opportunity comes up. You get you get asked to play a cool festival or support a bigger band on their tour or something like this, and then one of the band members just can't do it for whatever reason on that date. And now, if you can't quickly get someone else to do that, then you just can't do it. You got to say no. And who knows if you ever get asked again. So that actually hurt my bands quite a few times, I think. And we would have had a lot more opportunities and like better relationships with some of the promoters maybe as well if we would have been able to just say yes to everything, basically, because we would have known that if I can do it, someone else can play bass. Same for the other instruments. Maybe vocals are the exception oftentimes, but
Yeah.
tricky. But everything else I think can be done by someone else without really affecting the whole show and without people even noticing oftentimes. And so this whole concept, I think, is something that a lot of people don't think about because maybe they think it's weird if it's not the band, the same people. Maybe you're good friends and you only want to do it together. And that was us to a degree. But looking back now, I think it was stupid, and it would have helped the band, and it would not have hurt anyone really if we did it. And we often just didn't. But I think it's a mistake. Yeah.
On a truly professional level, it happens all the time.
Yes.
I mean, like Linkin Park is got 2 members right now.
Yeah.
And they're killing it, right? Like it does happen all the time. Marcus, the drummer in Band of Rascals, my old band, he is like a full-time session player for a bunch of bands. He's constantly filling in or going on tour with bands that he is not necessarily in the band of. But that's how he does that full-time, right? And these are original bands. It's totally commonplace at a professional touring level. So if you're feeling weird about it, it's probably an ego thing. And I could relate to that. I never got subbed out for a gig, I don't think. And I probably would have felt exactly the same.
Yeah.
Would have been like, oh, it has to be me, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. No.
Somebody can learn the songs that, the riffs I wrote and stuff and play it. That's not a problem.
Yeah. And then you'll benefit from it because if that show goes well and you said yes to that promoter and they call you again, next time you'll be on that stage. And so I think you'll just benefit from it. It's just the band needs to benefit from it. And the band should, in my opinion now, should be more important than just the individuals in a lot of cases, if it's something that you really want to move forward. So, yeah. But Manel, I don't know, do you have any experience with this? I know you've been playing in a lot of like cover bands, or I don't know if a lot, but you definitely played in like cover bands where you play because it's a job basically. Yeah. And I think in that scenario, it's even more common that like whoever can do the job will do it probably. But maybe speak from your experience.
And actually, one of the cover bands that I play sometimes, they have lots of members, so you never play with the same people. Like every gig you show up and someone different shows up, but we all have the same tracks, so we learn them as they are. And so there's no doubt when we play, but it can be a different drummer or someone that you don't know or whatever, So yeah, but also, like in my previous projects, we also had, like we reached a point where, for example, in our shows, we were changing the songs quite a lot. Like they were not exactly as they were recorded. So we needed to have that in a project, like to send it to someone if we needed to fill in for whatever, and also for us to practice. Because in that period, I was living in Ireland, but the band was in Spain. So I was the one, sort of like making the show and put it in Logic with all the tracks and all that, and all the changes and all the connections between songs and all that. So I had it in a way that I could hit play and play the whole show with, the spaces where I had to talk and all of that, so that I could send it to the other guys and they could practice the show like literally as it was without me. Like my guitar was playing, but I wasn't there, So
yeah.
And I think if you are smart about it, it's important to have your sort of way to record demos, because at the end you also need to practice to record your songs in a studio, or so if you have a system to record your demos, then you can use that to record the songs properly at some point and also practice the songs for a live show or whatever.
Totally. We had one of those Behringer X-Air 16s or something like that, it's like the iPad kind of mixer with just a bunch of inputs and outputs, right?
Yeah.
And it was perfect because we just had a headphone amp running out of it, so we had like a couple mixes coming out, just to headphones plugged right in for kind of in-ear monitoring, which we loved. But the ultimate part was we could just click record and run it into a DAW, right? If we wanted to, and get a demo just like that. We had no aspirations of using this as our final release. Although I'm pretty sure I did get sent something that was recorded on one of those that sounded awesome one time. Like I think somebody made a single on that and was like, they mixed it well, went great. But for us, it was just like, we're already using this, we're already practicing through this. Let's just click record, and now that new song is demoed. There's a version of it at the very least if we need to play it, or it's even covers. We had a couple covers we'd throw in pretty often. We just laid them down, and when we did have to have a sub in, we could just throw them that track to learn. So handy. Big bonus points tip. We didn't do this, but I did get sent something like this once. I got asked to play guitar in a band. Didn't end up doing it, but they sent me all the stuff, and it was the guitarist playing the song like on camera, so I could like go through and just learn it how I normally would, more or less by ear, and just listening to the tracks. But if I got stuck and couldn't figure out how something was pulled off, I just had this little visual. I could go and see the weird shape of his hand and be like, oh, that's how he's doing it. Or like, oh, okay, he's obviously in a different tuning, right? Just sped up those things a lot for me. It's like having a guitar teacher in front of you a little bit all of a sudden.
Yes, agree. That's like a bonus, or like even better if you can capture a video. I'm thinking about, we should call this episode not like about replacing band members, but just reasons. I don't know why you should learn to record yourself, even if you're not making your own record, something like that. Because there's so many reasons to learn to record yourself, even if you never really self-produce. Just like thinking about it now, the whole. What you said with the little Behringer thing that you had there, we had the same thing. And I remember a band that I was in, it didn't exist for too long. It was like a project that I had a couple of years ago. We rented out a cool studio in near here for a couple of days just for a writing session because we wanted to make a new record. And we knew that place was great. It was a friend of ours who was running it, and we could have it for a couple of days. Great live room and all that. But we didn't use his gear and all his setup there, the expensive stuff. We just wanted to use that room and wanted to stay there and be like remote, not at home, different environment, that kind of thing. And so we just brought our practice Behringer thing that you just mentioned, put it in that live room, and spent a couple of days there just playing, writing all day. And we just recorded everything. And then after this session, we could just go through all the tracks and we could rearrange things. We could easily manipulate things. We could try out a part a different way and all these things without having to play it again. And that was such a fun way of working on those songs. So without multi-track recording, that session would have been a lot less productive and a lot less fun. Then what you said, Manel, also, if you want to change things later in your set or little details about the songs, you can easily go into the session, manipulate it, cut out a part, copy and paste a part, or change the tempo, whatever you want to do to update your live set. You can even do things like you said, like the breaks in between songs, and you can have the whole show in there. So many reasons why recording makes so much sense these days, and it's so cool that we have the ability to do that. So this brings us to like the simple approaches thing that I already mentioned. Like, I think these days a simple digital desk is probably the thing you wanna have there, because you can use it for practicing and monitoring. You can use it to do your in-ear monitoring on stage, and you can also use it as a simple interface because most of them can do that, if not all of them now. So I think that's kind of the simplest approach there.
Yeah.
Instead of buying a bunch of like multi-channel interfaces and daisy chaining them and whatever, I would just get a desk with 16 inputs.
Yeah, they can be pretty darn cheap these days, and they're so powerful for just like versatility. I do want to say that I was thinking back about, again, the band days when we were doing pre-production with our producer Eric Ratz on our last album. That was all done remotely, so he would send us some notes and ideas. We'd go to practice every night and hash out these ideas and come up with something. And then on that point, we didn't have that Behringer thing, actually. We just had like a more analog style board, but it could record to a thumb drive, just a stereo mix. And we just did that. So at the end, we'd make all these changes, run all of the songs again with those new changes, and send off a folder of, version 18 of the songs to Eric Ratz. And then he would go through them and be like, well, this one was good, but this was the dumbest idea ever, yada, yada, yada. And then we would just rinse and repeat over and over. So even like the most basic stereo mix is still something and still incredibly useful. And, a musician's going to be able to learn from that if they have to. And a stem, way better, gives them the isolation to really hear things. But if you just have a decent bounce of the song, that's plenty.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. Still, I think multitracks is the way to go, especially these days since it's so easy. But if that's all you can do and you have one of these things already, then there's no excuse. Just record the stereo thing as a very minimum thing. But if you're gonna get something new, then I would go for one of these. I think the Behringer thing is a couple $100. It's like $300-400, something like this. Yeah, and you can record 16 channels or 12 channels at least, something like that. Very reasonable.
They have the Behringer XR 12. Or here's one on AliExpress, XR 18 for $266 Canadian, which is like $100 and everybody else's money. That's oddly cheap though. XR 12 long McQuaid, $475 Canadian. So yeah, that's gonna be like $300 in euros or something.
Yeah, totally. I would highly recommend you do that. And then bonus points if you can record the video, like you said. You could even I could even see people set up a session where you could have the video maybe in the DAW even, because they have video tracks in there, go along with that if you give it to someone else to practice. That's very useful for the replacing band members thing. So for a while now, I've been playing the guitar a lot more, which has been cool. So I have not been playing much the last couple of years, but for a couple of months now, I've been regularly practicing a guitar again. And all the songs that I wanted to play or like exercise or whatever, or just for fun, I hear a song and I want to know how to play it. Almost always, like I get the tabs at that stuff and I listen to the song obviously, but the fastest way for me to learn it is almost always to look up some sort of unplugged YouTube video version of that where someone plays the acoustic guitar and I can just exactly see what they do, or some playthrough thing. And if I see, like you said, if I see where they have their fingers and if they use a capo or have a weird tuning or whatever, it's just so much faster. So that in combination with an isolated guitar is just,
Yeah, I mean, that's how we all learned our instruments probably, is like, our buddy had a guitar and then we got one and we sat across from each other and looked at each other's hands and figured it out, right? So it does kind of intuitively come quicker that way than just hearing things, I think.
Yeah. And if you don't have all of that, by the way, it can be very painful. And I've experienced that as well last year. We've done a reunion show with a band of ours that hasn't been playing for, 15 years now at this point, and more than 15 years. And we did one kind of reunion show because our record had an anniversary, whatever. But like one of the original guitar players couldn't play the show. And so we had to find someone to play these. And they've been recorded 16 and 17 years ago, something like that. And there was no individual tracks available for all these songs, and so we found someone who wanted to play it and who said yes to it, and I think he regretted it at first, but then he was glad that he did it. It was Flo from our coaching community, actually. He was on the podcast as well, Flo Reithofer. He's amazing. And we met him at a show where we played with a different band. And then after like 3 beers or so, we mentioned this show and that we're looking for a guitar player to just do this one show. And then I think I said, Flo, I like, you can play the guitar, right? And he's like, yeah, sure. Like, you know what? I'm gonna do that. And so, so he agreed. Regretted it immediately, but then, pulled it off, followed through with it. And then for a couple of months, all he did basically was learn these pretty technical, fast, hardcore songs. And he's actually a drummer. He's not even a guitar player, really. He can play the guitar, but he had to practice a lot. Yeah. But he made it happen. And he was the one, honestly, he killed it. I think he played the songs better than we did at the show. Anyway, the way he had to learn it was what you just said there. Our guitar player had to sit down, film himself playing those songs, and then send it over to Flo so he could see it and play along with it. And then I think he created, I don't even know if we sent him tabs or something. But yeah, we didn't have proper multi-track recordings for everything. And it was relatively painful to show these songs to Flo, especially because it's technical and it was not always clear which guitar part was his. And like, I wish we could have just said, this is your part, ignore everything else, learn this, and ideally here's a video, and then it would have been a lot easier for him, I bet.
Yeah, I feel like the more technical the music too, and maybe more, even like the more loud the music is, the better it is to have all the other instruments available as well, because like how you play a riff, the context matters so much, you know, that with heavy music.
Yeah.
Like you could decide to play it so many different ways, but if you don't know what the drummer is doing, like you're going to totally potentially butcher how you lock into that riff.
Yeah. And here's another reason actually for why it's good to know how to do multi-track recordings. When we did that show finally, we also recorded that show, and whenever we can, we do that just to be able to analyze how we play things and you know spot mistakes. And I never really like to listen to that stuff, honestly, because I always feel so bad afterwards. Like I tend to ignore it,
terrifying,
which kind of is not the whole point of it is to listen to it so that you can get better. I tend to avoid this, to be honest. But in this case, we did it. We listened to the multi-track recordings. A drummer forced us to do this, I think, when I sat down in this kitchen at some point right before Jam Space. He said, let's listen to these. And then, we did it. And it turns out, and again, shout out to Flo, it turns out that it was okay overall, and we all did fairly okay. But Flo, by far, had the best recordings. Like Flo's performance was the best. Maybe because
he had time.
Maybe he had the most pressure or whatever. He definitely practiced more than we did, and so he was the fill-in kind of guitar player, but he was the best that day on stage.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. I remember, this is just a funny story, but it was our first like major festival we ever played, and there was a lot of cameras around and stuff like that. You know, on the big screen on the sides of the stage. It was just like such a cool experience, you know? So I asked our manager, I was like, hey, can you track down that footage of like us playing one of the songs? And he was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then he got back to me like a week later. I think I had to follow up even. I was like, hey, did you manage to find that? And he's like, we're going to leave that. It's not as good as you think. So, okay, got it. Yeah, we're not going to expose that to the world.
Yeah. The cool thing is though, in the moment, it's never that bad, or like people in the audience don't notice, or like I don't know what it is, but if you analyze it afterwards, it can be
so naked.
Yeah. So lots of reasons for you to learn to get into like multi-track recording. What else can we cover here? I mean, what matters and what doesn't really. Like if the plan never is to make an actual record, then I think it should be all about just the performances and being able to hear clearly what's going on. So I guess separation is more important than like how it sounds like sonically, you know. I think if you do a live thing, if you jam together, then I would focus on, you know, avoiding bleed as much as possible, recording things as isolated as possible. So it's going to be a little bit of a different approach compared to trying to capture the best possible sounds.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to add a little bit of controversy here.
Yes. Go ahead.
Because I think that it can also be a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that when you're learning guitar or any instrument, I don't think that, for example, using tabs all the time and, you know, making things easier for you is always the best thing. I think that sometimes it's going to be better because you're going to train your ear also if you learn the song only by trying to listen to your parts on the song. Term. So especially with tabs, I would only use tabs if it's necessary. And also what you said about the video, like if you get to a part where you're a bit confused and you definitely need some help, then you watch the video. But start watching the video like from the very beginning. I don't think it's probably the best idea if you are focusing your if you're focusing on learning. Mm-hmm. But when it's when in some of those cases we've mentioned where you really need someone to learn the songs really quick, then it's probably worth it. But if not,
all those tools become more helpful when there's a time limit for
Yeah,
sure. But
yeah,
but that
yeah.
does bring up a really interesting point, Manel, and that I wanted to mention was like as a producer, like I always had this list, this Rolodex of amazing session players that I knew could just like come in and just rock out a bunch of songs in a day, and just absolutely kill it. Like there's a type of player that hits that category, right? Like it's a very small amount of players that reach that level, and knowing them and having a list of them was super helpful for my band. Finding our guy Joe Avio, it was actually not somebody I'd worked with, but Marcus had played with, and pulled him in and he nailed it. But for sessions, having a bunch of guys, and then when I needed to recommend a fill-in for other bands, friends of mine or whatnot, I had this list to pull from. And a lot of those people played in cover bands professionally. It's a recurring theme of like, they learn so many songs, they get so good at figuring it out quickly, their ear develops super, super quickly, and they're also playing often to click tracks a lot. So they're so tight. They're so tight. So their ability to lift a song is like, it's instantaneous almost. They just like, if they've heard it, they know it pretty much, which is so cool. It's pretty amazing. So keep a Rolodex of good players around, and then if you have the time, just trying to learn it by ear is probably the best thing you can do for your musicianship.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm glad you brought it up, Manel, too, that it would also make sure that you really understand the song better and when and why things happen, and then you can also adjust better to whenever things go wrong. So, for example, if live somebody messes up, what I see happen a lot is when people only know it by numbers, basically, and they don't really listen to the song, they just know where to put their fingers. They oftentimes can't adjust or adapt when things go wrong, when somebody transitions into the next part too early or plays a part for too long or whatever, and then they they completely it throws them off, and they can't find back into the song again. But if you listen to the song a lot and you just know how it sounds and how it feels and when things happening, you just understand the song on a different level, and then you can also quickly change and adjust if things happen that are not supposed to happen. And that was always something that was bothering me when I played with people who were not able to do this. Some people can do that all the time, like they just react to the music, and you look at each other and you can pretty much improvise. But then there are people who, whenever something unexpected happens, they completely lose the ability to do anything and like to play the song and get back into it. That was always a little frustrating, but I think that comes from just learning it, by numbers and not really understanding the song. So I totally get that. But yeah, there are some really crazy people out there as well, like some insanely talented people where I heard stories of, I think I shared it on the podcast before. I don't remember the band at this point, but it's something very technical, death metal, Black Dahlia Murder type of thing. I don't remember if it was that band, but something like that, where I heard on a podcast where they needed a replacement guitar player for the next day or so, and they called someone, and he flew to that city there, and on the plane he listened to the songs without being able to play while he was listening. He was just sitting on the plane listening to the record, and then he landed and was able to play the show just by listening to that, and then maybe spend 2 hours before the gig or something like ridiculous like that.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
crazy.
Wow,
that's too much.
That is insane. Yeah, but yeah, definitely helps to have a couple of good players in your network as well.
And I don't know if it also happens to you, but when I learn a song by ear, I immediately know it, remember it,
Right. Yeah, it internalizes way quicker. Yeah.
If I learn it by like using tabs or something like that, it doesn't stick in my head.
Yes. What are your favorite ways of, simple ways of storing and sharing that material? Would you just have a shared Dropbox folder or a Google Drive or something like that? Probably, right? That's the way to go.
Yeah. We just did a Dropbox. That was the way we did it. But I'm sure any of those methods would work.
Yeah. I mean, if all of you have a DAW, maybe you could even not just, then you don't even have to export everything all the time. You can just have a shared project sitting in a Dropbox folder, and everyone can open the Logic session or Pro Tools or whatever you have.
Yeah, that's a great point. If it happens to align that way, you don't really know what the fill-in musician's going to have, but you can certainly ask, do you use this DAW, and then that'd be great.
Yeah, but that's a good point. In case, back to the whole replacing people and fill-in topic, you definitely should have a folder with the already exported stuff sitting around all the time in case of those emergency situations, so that when something comes up, you can immediately send it to someone and be like, hey, 3 days from now, you got to play this. Here's the tracks, So,
no pressure.
Yeah, totally. Cool.
Have you had to do that at some point?
I mean, like I said, there have been situations where we should have done that. We didn't oftentimes because we said, no, it's either us five or nobody, basically. But we could have played cool shows if we had that thing going on and if we all agreed to do that, yeah.
I think he's asking if you've had to be the guy learning short notice. Though.
Oh, all right. Okay, sorry. Misunderstood. Nope. No, I had to, but not short notice. No, not short notice. No, you had.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had to do. Well, that's not true. I've been asked to come up and play like a guitar solo with a band or something like that. So learning the solo the same day kind of thing. But that's one song. It's not the end of the world kind of thing. When I got asked to play with Jesse Roper, who you met, right?
Yes.
Benny, you met Roper, yeah. I
had no idea who he was, but then later I learned that he's actually quite a big deal over there. But
he's killing it, for sure.
I had no idea, but yeah.
That was, I mean, I think I had like a week or two for that, but I had to learn like a whole set kind of thing, and I'd never had to try and cram like that kind of thing. And he's a freaking great guitar player, so it was kind of tricky.
Yeah. Little side story. Yesterday, I showed, because I talked to my kids about maybe going to Canada, at some point soon again, and maybe taking them with me. And then they wanted to see pictures from my last trip there. And then I showed them the pictures and also video from your wedding. And then I saw, and I totally forgot how great that moment actually was, because I saw that video of you and Beth on your porch there with Roper playing and the sunset and all that. That was like so perfect.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
First dance, it's great.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, okay, so you had to do that. And I bet Malcolm or Manel, all three of us maybe, I think we all had to do it, I just realized, because at least in my case, I completely forgot. I had to do it often, actually, but not for live situations, but at the studio.
Yes.
When I am working with bands in the studio, and when I was doing full production, I was very often in a situation where someone wasn't able to play a part, or I wanted to show them something real quick, or a different way to play it, or an idea or something. Mm-hmm. So I actually had to be able to do that all the time. So yeah, I did it all the time without even realizing. I just recorded them and I listened to the part over and over again, and I obviously watched them play it right next to me, and almost always I was able to just grab the guitar and play it immediately because of that.
And kind of on a riff by riff basis, but yeah, definitely. It's just like, okay, that's not sounding how I want it to sound. Give me that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Such a control freak.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it's just to show them an idea or a different way of playing it, but that's part of the skill set that you have to have as a producer, I think, to be able to, at least on a base level, understand all kinds of instruments and be able to communicate, or ideally show them real quick. I think that's part of being a producer, is that you are able to do that, and that involves being able to listen to a part and then knowing how to play that. Maybe not perfectly, but to some degree,
Yeah, can be communicated anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to record a whole album with like the bass of the album, because our bassist, he wasn't playing at all. Like, he wasn't prepared at all. So we were there in the studio and he was, like trying, but it wasn't enough. So I just brought the bass home for one day, practiced all the songs, and then came back and recorded it. But he was fine with that, because he didn't like to record at the studio. He just wanted to be in the band to like tour and play live and all that.
Bass players.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I kind of like, I can understand that because my current role in my band now is pretty much that, where I'm like, I'm a bass player, and I said, and that was kind of the deal. And sorry, Uli, if you're listening to this, but I mean, you know it. That was the deal. He was like, "Hey, do you want to play here?" And I'm like, "No, I actually don't want a new band." Yeah, but you wouldn't have to do much. Just show up for the gigs, you know, and the occasional practice.
Show up, drink beer.
Yeah, exactly. And I agreed, and I was like, okay, I don't really feel like I want to write a lot of. That has changed now. Like right now, I feel more. I'm having fun being creative again. But when I joined the band, I was really like, okay, I'm gonna play a couple of shows. I'm gonna show up, but I do the bare minimum for this band to be able to exist, basically. and what I've done is actually also the same thing. I totally forgot that. Like every time, like we maybe practice 3 or 4 times a year. Really, that's all we do because we are living in different cities. We never get together, and we just, you know, everybody practices at home. So I do that actually all the time. And whenever we play a show, usually the day before or 2 days before or something, I grab the bass, listen to the songs, play them once, and then I go to the show. Or when we jam, it's the same thing. So I actually have to do it quite a bit. Yeah, and this is pretty much my role in the band. And yeah, still, if we were to record a new record, which we will probably be doing this year, hopefully, I will be prepared because I take that seriously. And I also take the show seriously and I play well there. But like, I'm just saying.
So you're filling in for yourself every time.
Basically, yeah.
Just in time learning.
Yeah, totally. I don't think it's an excuse to. I think you should still be prepared because if you say yes to something, then you show up prepared, and that's what I do. But I understand the kind of situation where you do the minimum and you play the shows. If that's the agreement, if everybody's on board with that, of course.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the adjacent topic of replacing podcast hosts?
Yes, I was about to get into that. Honestly, thank you, Malcolm. We need this segue now. I avoided the banter at the beginning because I thought it could potentially be a longer one, and I wanted to avoid the like we get a couple of comments now that where people are like, wasted 15 minutes of my life when I clicked on this video, you know. So now this what's about to happen is for those of you who are have been listening for a long time, you're going to appreciate this. And if you're new, I hope you still stay with us because this is important to all of us, I think. So yeah, replacing band members, now leading into replacing podcast hosts. I don't even know how to make that happen. But there's a reason for why we are here together, the three of us. And Malcolm, you listened to that one episode where I kind of talked about it already. But maybe you tell people what's actually going on because we still left them in the dark pretty much. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. If you did listen to that episode a few weeks ago or so, probably now, I'm not sure exactly how long ago. Benny did tell everyone that I'm moving on and kind of leaving the podcast, which is insane because we're 257 episodes in. Been doing this for years with you. It's been amazing. It's a big part of my life. Benny, you've become one of my closest friends.
Yeah. And
yeah, this is just like such a special thing for me. But on the other hand, I do like no music now. My life has moved further and further away from what this podcast is really about, and I've kind of felt that I have less to offer more and more, but also that it's just not even in the area of where I'm trying to focus my energy. So I want to say that it's just like it's for the benefit of the listeners because I don't have anything to offer in this, but it's really also for my own goals of what I want to just be putting all my energy into and keeping my mind focused on, and that is these stupid things that I spend all my money on now, cameras.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I just over like the last few years, my life has transitioned into my work in television and documentary and stuff like that. Getting really into filming things and just working in that industry, and it's ultimately where I want to be and where I want to continue to push and excel at and grow in. So yeah, Benny and I just had a long chat one day about that reality and just kind of decided that we needed to switch it up and figure out what the next form of this podcast was. And Manel, his name came up instantly. And I only met Manel in person like in October. I don't know this guy at all. No, I feel like I got to know you really quick, and I appreciate you a lot. And we both just, thought you were perfect. So I'm so glad, Manel, that you wanted to do this. Like, really, really glad, because that was like having the idea of you being the guy really made me feel really comfortable and confident when I did discuss this with Benny and said that I thought I needed to move on, because I didn't want to do that without having like the next step for the podcast in mind. Like the more that I knew I wanted to move on, but even more I want this podcast to continue, because I think it helps a lot of people. I know it helps a lot of people. We have a lot of people listening to this, and a lot of people that have been listening to this for a very long time. And I get to meet people that listen to this, and yeah, it's an important thing. But I think it's going to be better than ever when there's two people that actually do music involved with it. That's going to be a game changer.
Oh, man.
I can only give anecdotal experience for so long.
yeah, man. Yeah, it's been tough, but also as I told you when we had this conversation, I did see it coming because obviously you've been doing more and more television work, and you're interested in the camera thing more and more, and I was thinking about it too, because as much as I'd love to do this with you, and like no doubt, no question, I think we would still have plenty to talk about. One of the things that is so important to me about this platform is the fact that that the people who do this are people who actually actively make records, because that is what separates us from a lot of other educators out there and content creators who are just that. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I never wanted to be primarily a content creator. It's very important to me that we practice and do what we talk about here regularly, and so that we can share from current experiences and all that. And so I think it makes sense, and I actually respected that decision a lot. And I thought it was like, I mean, it was not easy for you to bring it up either. So I thought it was an important, tough, thing to talk about. But then again, it was not that tough at all, the conversation, because we're friends and it makes sense. And I appreciate you bringing it up, and I totally understood immediately. And Yeah,
we obviously just both want what's best for each other and our audience.
Yeah.
Like one thing I really loved about us up until a year ago is that we were very on the forefront of recording techniques in engineering, in editing, in mixing and mastering, always on like the newest and latest, greatest, cutting edge ways of just making things sound insane. And you still are, but I am not anymore. Like going to Studios NA with you guys, I was like, people are doing some shit. This is cool. I had no idea, and which is awesome. But if I can't be helping discover that kind of stuff and bringing it to our audience, it's better if they have somebody that in my role that can do that.
Yeah. So Manel, now you have to be on the cutting edge technologies.
It doesn't have to be technology.
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you mean, and it's right. And I think, but that's also a great thing you bring it up, because this is, as much as it is a big change and not easy for me, of course, it is also an opportunity for this podcast, because we cannot simply replace you. We can, try new things, do it in a fresh new way, which maybe is not a bad thing after 5 years. Anyways, And so Manel is I think less technical than we both are, and so what we talked about now is maybe we can have a different angle, different perspectives now in our conversations. It's not going to be two people talking about nerdy stuff, because Malcolm and I, when we talk about audio things, we both know that stuff, and we can talk about it for hours. And there's never really, we had this kind of same level of understanding of all the technical things, and we will go deep sometimes and just nerd out. And now with Manel, I think there's a different perspective because Manel is working more directly with the artists, much more focused on writing, the creative process, the production, the arrangement, all that, and not so much about just mixing and plugins and technical things. And so I get to talk about stuff that I don't go too deep in anymore,
Right. Yeah.
and it's maybe also closer to the listeners in some ways. It's just a different angle. So I hope I still am at the forefront of what happens to technology wise, but I don't think that Manel necessarily has to do that. I appreciate his input on just what it's like to work with DIY artists and turn phone demos into songs.
Yeah, no, and so technology is an example.
Yes, I know. Totally,
techniques and the works.
Yes.
It all adds up, and
that's pretty much cutting edge too. I mean, it's not been for so long that people were able to just turn phone demos into amazing sounding stuff, right? So
yeah, exactly. It there's always something new that somebody's doing in some area of this music creation process that needs to be discovered and shared.
Yeah, I think that, of course, this podcast is about music and audio, but the most important thing I think it is that this podcast is about honesty. And that's what we are doing here now, talking about this.
Yeah. It's supposed to be authentic and real and totally. And so that's why I thought I appreciated Malcolm bringing it up and making that decision, because it is very much aligned with what we're trying to do here and what we stand for. And so if I can think of any reason to get back on this podcast for an episode here and there, I will. Yes, and I would love to do that, man. And like we said earlier before we started recording this, we need to make time to just stay in touch, because for me, it's not just this. It's not just the podcast. As you can imagine, people, if you get to spend time with someone for an hour or two every single week for 250 weeks almost in a row, or 5 years with there was a couple of weeks on and off, but then we made up for it another week. So for 5 years, every week, 2 hours average or something like that, we were just meeting and talking to each other. And this is far more than just creating a podcast. I spent more time with you in the last 5 years than I have with many of my friends here. So
100%.
Yeah. And so
I think my wife could be argued to be less.
Yeah. No, that's so important. And we also chatted about other things, obviously, about personal stuff. And it was just a great way
we don't even get to an episode.
Yeah.
We end up hanging out and we're like, we blew it.
Yeah, totally. Even that happened. Yeah. It's just, we used it as an opportunity to catch up and all that. And it's been an important part of my life, an important part of my routine. Nothing would get in the way of that. And so, yeah, I just want to say thank you again for all these years, and I appreciate it so much what you've done for this platform and for this podcast. And it wouldn't exist without you. We've told that story a couple times on the podcast as well. It was your idea to start this podcast, and that's where all this other stuff came from eventually. So I owe a lot to you, and I probably never be able to properly make up for that, but I'm forever grateful. And so,
the pleasure was all mine. And a huge thank you to all the listeners and supporters over the year. We put out some courses together. We got to meet up with a lot of you in person. It's been a really cool experience.
Yeah, totally. And I know for a fact that people appreciated you a lot, because I got a lot of messages about this, and people were reaching out about personal stuff too, and how much they enjoyed something they learned from you, or they have a relationship with us. This is the thing about podcast is you spend a lot of time with somebody in your ears, so you feel like they are talking to you directly, and you feel like you know them. And so people have this relationship with you as well, and not just with the podcast. They have it with the people behind the podcast. And so I know that they appreciate you for sure. And we're all very, very grateful.
I have 4% left on my battery.
Oh, damn.
I didn't realize I'm not plugged in.
Really? There's no way you can plug it?
I can plug it.
You probably should, even though we're almost done anyways. But
I have to find it. So,
Please do.
I will be back.
Yeah.
For longtime listeners, Beasley's back in the podcast.
Oh, man.
now we have to, like, Malcolm has to make the documentary about the self-recording band, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That would be fun. That would be super cool.
The self-recording documentary. That would be the name.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Made
Malcolm,
it.
we just said if this thing ever reaches like a size, like a whatever, where it is relevant to a lot of people and it becomes this like huge success story, whatever that we built here, then you have to make a documentary about all this. That's gonna be your
That's a
gig
deal.
then.
That's a good deal. I also was just thinking how hilariously funny it would have been if my goodbye speech was cut short because my computer died. I think that would have been so good. And that was it. I never came back. I just want to say, bloop.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Yeah, I think you will come back at some point that we need to
I'm
do
sure.
the occasional episode. But yeah, for now, I already said to Manel earlier today when I invited him to the session today, I was like, do you want to join us and be there for the like ceremony where Malcolm is handing you the keys to the kingdom? And he said, yes, I'm glad we're here, that all of us are here. But like, yeah, but Manel, as much as I'm grateful for Malcolm for everything he's done, I'm also super grateful that you said yes to this and that now a new era can begin and that you are
100%.
you're doing this. And yeah, thank you.
And
to both of
I'm
you.
also super grateful that you both thought about me.
Yeah. We
do
can cut
this.
this out if you guys want, but I thought of you on a shrooms trip. That was when I came out. I was like, perfect.
Yep. No, that's perfect. That's absolutely and yeah, makes sense. No. Reassuring, yeah. Experience for sure. But yeah, I mean, it is perfect. We both came up immediately with that idea and yeah. Here we are.
Yeah, it just made perfect sense. Absolutely.
Malcolm, man, I really hope that you and the new things you're doing are doing super well and this all works out for you. We didn't really have a chance to talk since then because you've been busy all the time on
It's been so busy lately.
some trip to the US, but like I really hope to get an update there at some point and I just hope it all goes as planned or even better or like that all the things happen that you want to happen and I wish you all the best with all of that. I have no idea about the whole video thing. I just hope it works out for you and it's a lot of fun.
It is. It's a ton of fun. Thank you. I appreciate it. And obviously, yeah, the same with this. But we'll be staying in touch. I'll be keeping an eye on the community.
Sure. Man, I don't even know what to say.
Now I just unplug my computer and we just let it die.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, here we are. It's all said and done. Appreciate you guys for listening to this, for staying with us for this second part of this episode. I appreciate all of you longtime listeners for being a part of this for so long. And leave a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. Maybe share some favorite Malcolm moments. Send us messages, send us emails. We really would love to see this. And I'm sure Malcolm will be back at some point. But let's celebrate those 250 episodes that he did with us, man. That's insane. Like, I think that's very remarkable. And we're all super grateful.
Thanks, everyone. All right.
All right. We're out. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bombastic.
Bye.
One last one.
Oh, man.